After a few weeks of getting manhandled by a crazy work schedule and a baby going through a sleep regression and a toddler who's sick and everyone's kind of on the edge, I am back. Feels good to be back. And today I actually want to respond to a comment that was left on our last video regarding someone who noticed that I am clearly a Latter-day Saint and wanted to know, I guess, whether or not we're right is the way they put it. But for me, the way I interpret it as is why I stay. Why would somebody who is philosophically inclined, interested in evolution and psychology and Jung and mythology and all of these things, why would someone like this want to stay a Mormon? Because the reason that I am a Mormon is for a very large part the same as a lot of Latter-day Saints, especially in the United States, which is I was born into the church. My parents were members of the church, and thus I was baptized when I was a child, when I was 8 years old. And having been raised a Mormon, I have grown into an adult Mormon. I served a mission in Portugal, and I still speak Portuguese. I have some aspirations to re-record some of these things in Portuguese if there are any Brazilians or Portuguese or Angolans who would be interested in such a thing, maybe someday. But all of these are simply to say that's the reason why I started in the church in the first place. I was simply born into it. But that doesn't answer the question of why do I stay? Because there are plenty of people with plenty of valid reasons who decided not to stay in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And there are many, many, many of those sorts of videos on YouTube and Instagram Reels and TikTok, etc. But what I want to do is give a depiction of why would somebody stay in the Latter-day Saint Church? More specifically, why do I stay in the Latter-day Saint Church? Even knowing and understanding a lot of the very tricky and messy things, such as early polygamy to young women, young to say the least, and some of the theocratic elements in Brigham Young and some of those early prophets, and then the hyper-conservatism that has really gripped the church since about Joseph Fielding Smith or something like that, and definitely carried through with Bruce R. McConkie and Ezra Taft Benson and Boyd K. Packer and all of these figures who, like, I'm not trying to throw shade on them and say they weren't inspired men. I'm not trying to say they weren't very good people, because I think that they were very good people. But I also think that that is just a very small glimpse into maybe the disposition which I don't partake in as a Latter-day Saint. I'm not that guy. I'm not the hyper-conservative, sort of believe every word of the current prophet and you have to obey it down to the letter of the law or you're not faithful. I'm just not that guy. Not that I don't strive for obedience, but if you know the type of person that I'm talking about, then you know I'm not that guy. What kind of guy am I then? What would lead a person like me to stay in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints? And I have a lot of answers to this question. It's actually quite difficult to formulate a coherent and brief answer because at the end of the day, it's not a brief answer. It's something that would take a lot of time to really unfurl and show what it is that I find so compelling about Mormonism. And I want to start that in a very small way today. And my aspiration is to make this a little bit of a recurring theme, to make this a bit of a series of whether you're a Christian, a Protestant, a Catholic, what have you, and you're interested in Latter-day Saint thought and theology. Why would somebody believe this? I've been told that this is heretical or sinful or they're demonically influenced, all of these things that are said about us. If you want to dispel some of those myths and themes, then hopefully this can do that. I think even more what I want to do is speak to the atheist and the agnostic and ultimately like my friends who know that I am Mormon and maybe have wondered, why do I stay? Just like how I started this video, what makes a person like me stay in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints? So without further ado, I want to discuss a few of those reasons today and then continue forward in the future, and I think things will cohere more and more as time goes on. One thing that I find very compelling in the broader theology of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints is the concept of co-eternal existence with God, which really it's sort of taking the thermodynamic laws of Newtonian physics, the energy and mass cannot be created or destroyed, and extending that out both backwards and forwards, and in a very profound way. And encapsulated in that is this phenomenon that we experience as consciousness. Latter-day Saints are radically monistic. Monism being the belief that everything is ultimately just one substance. Monos being like single in Greek, the singular thing that is all things in one, the unifying substrate of the universe. And for Latter-day Saints, we call that intelligence. The glory of God is intelligence. Spirit is made up of intelligences, and spirit and matter are ultimately the same thing. It's just that spirit is more refined somehow. Maybe we can't observe it directly like we can other material forms, for whatever those reasons may be. And I think that insight actually directly influences a lot of the things that I have said in earlier videos of like, if only we had the gas chromatography of the soul, if only we had the prism upon which to split time into its beams, and we had the spectrometer of all of these phenomenal elements that form the life that we live beyond just the material substrate that we come in contact with. And how are these things all related? For a Latter-day Saint, they are related fundamentally. They're ontologically related because they are part of the great one thing, which is all things. And then God comes in as the wise and eternally powerful organizer of that pre-existent spirit, matter, intelligence, whatever that thing is. And it's like, what does that mean? I don't know exactly what that means, but I do think that it actually fits in very well with a sort of broader purpose for conscious existence of like, why are we here? Is it really just to be born and eat and procreate and then die and that's it? That's sort of the nihilist response. Is like, there is nothing but right now, because whatever comes afterward is causally determined by what came before it, and there's nothing we can do to change the before or the after, so we may as well just enjoy the now before the heat death of the universe. And this assertion that there is such a thing as both spirit and matter, and they are jointly unified, they are guided by a personal God. Now, whether that God is literally incorporeate as we conceptualize it to be having a body and all of this, or whether it's a sort of teleological force. I mean, there's an argument that you could have there, but in terms of the God that we worship, in terms of the God that we have a relationship to, not necessarily what he literally is in the eternal spectrum of all being and time, but the God that we worship, God as if he were unto us, that is a man. And that is a man who has been perfected and who has perfected himself over untold stretches of time to the point that he is able to participate in this co-creative generation and organization of spirit and matter into these other beings that can then join him in the eternal process of co-creating more intelligent spirits. And I think that it's a very evolving process. I think that it aligns itself with our theory of evolution of biological life. There's even a sort of evolutionary aspect of the cosmos in terms of stars that form and their different sizes, and the larger ones can consume the smaller ones, and then there's supernovas, and that splinters things out, and you get new elements, new matter that didn't exist before, and that allows planets to form, and that allows all of the minerals and things that we need as living organic beings to function and survive. Like, there's so much that comes out as implications of just reframing creation ex nihilo, creation out of nothing, into the organizer God of the Latter-day Saints. and what that means for who we are, what we become, what we may become, and the purpose of life itself. And I think the fastest and most simple way to describe this is simply the primary song. Primary being the sort of children's Sunday school that the kids will go to every Sunday. There's this really sweet primary song that's, I am a child of God. What are the implications of being a child of God? That you as a child can mature through adolescence and become an adult like unto God. Does that mean that God is now less of a God? No. That means that he is even more glorified because he has been able to sort of manifest and then channel these spiritual beings upward in a progression to become more like him, participating in this eternal round of creation with him. That does not take anything away from God. I think that this particularly Protestant view that, oh, well, my God's powerful to infinity. Well, my God is powerful to infinity plus one. Well, I believe in the most powerful God that could conceivably exist in the whole universe. Well, my God is over 9,000. It's like, this is silly, you guys. This is silly. Maybe you can state these things as assertions of faith, like, well, this is what omniscience means to me. This is what omnipotence means to me. He has to be literally all-powerful to the point that God has no vulnerabilities, and because he has no vulnerabilities, he's actually not able to relate to any of his spirit children and creations, and so therefore we just are on the conveyor belt of existence, and then the elect get spit out at the other end, and they go to heaven, and then everybody else goes to hell. I mean, that's, come on, Calvinist, does that not sound familiar here? So I think that shift away from ex nihilo creation, that everything arises from this one source, this one pre-existent source of being, which we call intelligence. And it's like, what is intelligence? I don't know. That's sort of the big quest, I guess, of maybe science in a Mormon frame, is like getting in touch with what's even beyond matter, to the thing that connects matter with phenomenality itself, these intelligences. And then watching our own intelligences and knowing that we as spirit beings made up of pre-existent spirit intelligences, we come into this life with baggage. We come into this life with a pre-existent personality. And you can say that this is genetic. You can say that this is sort of the nurture, the environment in which you were born. And these things mold who you are. But I think that beyond this, like, some of us just come into life with certain propensities or drives or even callings that like feel so much more than just, oh, well, I guess I'm really high in trait openness, so I'm naturally going to gravitate toward creative endeavors as such, and then cultural deterministic forces have acted upon me that now I'm really interested in drawing. So drawing maps on well with my, you see, like, that's not really how it works. Not that it never works that way. Obviously, there's a big dialectical force going on here between our nature and our nurture from the outside environment. But I think, well, let's take a look at this concept of Jungian subpersonalities or archetypes and things that reside within ourselves and speak to something beyond. And they're playing around in our psyche. Psyche coming from the Greek word psyche, which means soul. Psychology is the study of the soul and its constitutive parts. And I think that, again, this Latter-day Saint doctrine of intelligences, these pre-existent forms of the one thing, this monism of all things that gets created by God into spirits, however that happens, whatever that means, we are living that out as the sort of the divisions within us and the things that we bring with us into the world that nobody told us to think or believe or to be. They're simply there. And yes, certainly some of those are encoded in our genetic code, and they express themselves how they will. But it's like, as a trained geneticist, even that is like, it's a bit of a misunderstanding of genetics. Like, to think that the expression of a protein, regardless of the very complex epigenetic up or down regulation that could be going on in any of these things, that's going to dictate without fail, you will think or act or believe these things in your conscious self-conception and experience in the world. Like, that's putting a huge amount of load on what genetics and proteomics and all of these things can reasonably explain. Again, not that they don't clearly form very large forces that play into our lives and how we live life. I mean, me, for myself, as someone who lives with bipolar disorder, this is a neurochemical thing that I experience, and that dictates in a very large way the moods that I am going to have in any given day, regardless of any preventative measures that I do. But the preventative measures do help, and that also doesn't mean that it's like the entirety of my life is now dictated by bipolar disorder as a neurochemical process. Like, there's more going on in my own drives and these things you could call archetypes and subpersonalities and complexes and all of these things. And I love the field of Jungian psychoanalytic thought, because it really gives images and words and a voice to this side of the human experience. Okay, and I think in that same theme of intelligences and things being sort of organized from pre-existent spirit matter, there's also the ontology itself of being as becoming. That what is always becoming something new. The Mormonism is very progressive in a sort of a process theology sense, that things are always moving toward something else, or at least that's the desired state, is to be becoming, to never be simply static in being, but to always become something more. That the evolutionary process of creation and the will to power and the mastery, the drive to mastery, all of these things are becoming. The God of becoming is a very Mormon conceptualization of God. So another reason for which I stay in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints is simply a pragmatic reason. And I don't think that it devalues what's going on here because it's speaking to something divine. But it goes a little bit something like this. And if you've ever read The Righteous Mind by Jonathan Haidt, you'll kind of get a gist of what I mean when I say this. And I will do more on that book in particular in the future, because it's been a pivotal text for me in my own journey with faith. But essentially it goes something like this. Can you really trust yourself to always put the best possible value forward as the guiding principle for yourself and for your community? Another way to say this is, everybody is born with different perceptions of what could be considered like God to them, whether it's equity, whether it's fairness and meritocracy, whether it's openness to experience and pluralism, whether it's industry and putting forward a good faith effort every day in the sort of endurance of life and providing for your family, those sort of quotidian but all important necessities to keep the life process going. Each of these things can be taken and is taken by different people as their sort of supreme guiding ethic, their supreme, really their God. And it's going to be different from person to person because we all come into life with different propensities, with different ways of viewing and evaluating the world around us. And broadly speaking, that divide manifests itself in the sort of right wing versus left wing in American democratic politics. Obviously, there's a lot more nuance here, but generally speaking, and this is how Jonathan Haidt divides things down, is, you have the left, which favor equality of a certain kind, and pluralism and inclusivity and things like that. And you have the right, which favor fairness. It's different than the equity-based equality, a type of justice seen on the left. You have fairness and reciprocity, and you have a sense of purity in the sacred, and all of these other values that obviously they overlap to some degree, but really, especially as things become more and more polarized, these things push each other away like two poles of a magnet. And you get more and more polarized senses of what is right and wrong based on whichever sort of socio-political tribe you happen to fall into. Now, here's the catch. Are you, me, whoever's listening to this, me as the speaker, are you willing to be humble enough to admit the other side, whoever that may be, contains truth that I am missing on my own? Do you, as that person who has, for whatever reason, really bought into the party line, or you simply think that like the other side is, well, they're misguided, they're essentially heretical, they have just been led astray by their own pride, not like me, because I'm in touch with what is right. Are you willing to say, in a humble way, no, there is actually something more that is higher than the values that govern either the left or the right, broadly speaking? And I think that this image of the wise old man, the wise figure who pulls from the right and the left, who knows in which time and place and circumstance and with whom to govern in a particular manner, this image of God, this image of the patriarch, the ultimate patriarch of God, I think is extremely useful in the sort of bridging of the gap that naturally will form again and again and again and again in human communities, because that's our nature. That's what we're born with, is the division within us, because if not, then how would we have ever been able to see and understand the world collectively in the most holistic sense possible? If we were all like Jack Black, let's say, if everybody on earth was born like Jack Black, just hilarious and loves to have a good time and party and super funny, all of these things, what would that do to human society if we all only saw the world from this one fairly idiosyncratic, very fun but idiosyncratic way of engaging with the world? You need the accountants, you need the lawyers, you need the surfers, you need everybody who's filling all of these roles, not just in the tasks that they perform, but in the disposition, in the way of being that they come into the world with and that they play out through their lives. And everybody is going to be a little bit different. And Mormonism accounts for that, and counts for where that largely has come from. And then also, I think, uniquely as a religion, it does a great job portraying the paradoxical nature of truth. And if you want a great resource for this concept in particular, Terrell Givens, who is a well-respected, I guess you could call him theologian, he's a literary professor and critic who used to teach at the University of Richmond, if I'm not mistaken, for a very long time, and now he's at BYU at the Maxwell Institute, which is sort of their religious wing, their sort of studies wing of the religious studies department. They do research and write books and things. So he's a very fascinating character, and his book, People of Paradox, talks about a lot of these innate paradoxes bound into Mormonism, agency versus obedience, and of the sort of the church that you have to listen to versus individual autonomy, and then purity and taking the high road versus a God who has collapsed sacred distance, that he is right here with us physically, that God has a physicality and thus a vulnerability that the God of the Trinity does not have, and a closeness with us as his children that cannot be had by the God of the Trinity. So there's all of these things that Mormonism embraces paradox. Now, do Mormons always embrace paradox? Unfortunately, I think the answer is clearly no. But that doesn't mean that the theology itself doesn't have these sort of portents of a very, very broad and inclusive, expansive vision of what is considered to be true, what is considered to be truth. And it's certainly not what any one given person thinks or believes and all of these things. And that's kind of what God represents in a lot of ways, is he's both the king on the throne and the voice from the wilderness, calling you to change, calling you to repent, saying, you're not there yet, you're not there yet. But he's also the bosom friend who's saying, it's okay. You don't have to have done everything perfectly by this point in your life to go to heaven. And that's another thing that Latter-day Saints believe, is this concept of okay, well, it's either heaven or hell. You're either going up or you're going down, and there's kind of nothing in between. I know the Catholics believe in the purgatory, and I've read Dante a decent amount, and I studied it, and I understand more or less what purgatory is through that lens. But I'm not well versed enough to speak to it as oh yes, this is who gets to go to purgatory, this is who gets excluded. I'm simply not educated on that enough to really go into that. If anything, I think we believe something a little bit similar in the sense that even after death, if somebody has had a really rough life, they have been put into an impossible situation, or even something as simple as, oh, well, you need to be baptized in order to be saved. Well, what about someone who was born in the middle of the mountains in China in the 1200s? They're just toast. They don't count. Oh, well, it's God's creations, but these not their children because they haven't been taken up into the family of faith. That's really cruel, frankly. I think that is an extremely cruel and honestly arbitrary and even nihilistic way to view human life, that after you die, unless you just so happen to have the good fortune of being born in a Western European country during these set of times, or their sort of colonial diaspora, that you're just done because you didn't express belief in Christ in the one particular way, that this is the one true way to salvation. It's in some ways I believe in something like that if you want to be part of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, instead of the salvific elements of that, whatever again that may be in this sort of spirit world and the world hereafter, you're going to need to have some ordinances done, some physical things done, like baptism, like having someone place their hands on you and give you the Holy Ghost, an elder of the church, and all of these different rituals that we do. I believe that those things are important. I think those are important milestones in life. I think they're great visual stimuli for us to recognize something sacred is happening, and the religious symbolism is very beautiful. But I think also beyond that, if there is such thing as life after death, then in order to be part of the club, so to speak, in order to be bound together as a tribe, I guess, as a great family, as Zion, as this concept of Zion, that is the godly holy city that persists from the earth into the eternities, that in order to be a part of that, you need to be bound through covenant. You need to be bound through these rituals. And to both address that element of what is needed to sort of enter the spirit world in a positive way, or also to deal with these conundrums of well, what about my ancestors were born in Japan in the 1400 and there weren't Christians yet and all this stuff. They never got a chance, so they just go to hell. It's okay, here's the thing. The quick answer is no. They will not just go to hell, largely because we do not believe in a physical location of hell as is conceptualized by most Christians. We believe, I'm sure many of you have been told, the three heavens. Oh, the funny Mormons believe in three heavens. Well, listen, hear me out on this one. I think that it's a very elegant solution to the problem of innate human difference. Because instead of saying it's either or, heaven or hell, you have gradations. You have gradations of capacity. You have gradations of willingness to obey God's commandments and sort of be humble to what is ultimately better for you, and you know it, but you just don't want to. How much are you listening to that voice that's saying, hey, don't smoke that spliff. Don't go on that bender with your friends at the club. You know it's not a good idea. No, it's fun. It's fun. I enjoy it. And so there's this tug and pull. Are you on an upward trajectory in your life towards something higher? All of these things, I think, factor in to what could be considered these degrees of glory. Like when you think about it that way, it actually makes a lot of sense because not everybody is the same. In fact, nobody is the same. Everybody is different, and that will naturally sift itself out based on capacities and effort given and propensities, all of these things that play into it. And so you have the kingdom telestial, which is the symbol given as the stars, the light of the stars, and then the kingdom terrestrial, which means earthly in the word, but the symbol given for it is the moon, and then the kingdom celestial, which is, where God lives, and then there's gradations within that. Apparently there's gradations within all these. Some people even muse like, oh, is there eternal progression between the kingdoms, or are you stuck there your whole life? Nobody, it's like, who knows? We're not dead. We didn't die yet. We didn't go to the degrees of glory yet. We don't actually know how this is going to work like with certainty because we're not there. But we can use it as a sort of conceptual map to say people are naturally different just by birth and then also by the choices that they make. There is such a thing as agency, and God is going to judge us to the ultimate degree of our personal context. Like no one else can do it but God, because no one else but God, through Jesus Christ and the atonement, has been through, in a true and infinite sense, the sufferings and the trials and the sicknesses and all of the internal baggage that we have carried with us throughout all of our lives. So in that sense, God is the perfect judge because he understands all of the context. Now, does that mean that we get a free pass? No. Because that defeats the purpose of life. If the purpose of life is simply to say, I had a hard life, look at all of this that I endured, I didn't like completely give way to my animalistic nature, but I got pretty bad, and now I finally get to rest, I'm finally dead, and that's it, and now I get to be dead as a spirit forever. No, we want to shift the frame, and the purpose of life is not simply to endure and then die, but it's to constantly strive for something better, to be the best version of ourselves that we can possibly be. That's the parable of the talents. That's the person with 5 talents and with 2 talents. Both of them double them. Both of them are sort of taken into the rest of the Lord. Both of them are given even more to take care of. And it's only the one who hides it. It's only the one who's like, I am going to bury this talent. I don't want to do anything with it because I'm so afraid to mess things up. That's the only one that the Lord in that situation says, sorry, you don't get a second chance here. I'm going to take that talent and give it to someone else. The Lord wants us to try ourselves. He wants us to, it's just the Portuguese wants to come out for some reason, strangely enough. It's like esforzarnos. It's like the outward expression of our strength and pushing towards something good and better all the time. And that is so inextricably linked with the Mormon ethic and Mormon theology that there's really no way to get around it. To the point, as I have said, that it is bound up even in our salvation itself, our soteriology, for all the people who get obsessed with the fetish Greek words for theological concepts. But I actually think I forgot to mention something. Oh yeah, so let's return to our friend who was born in 12th century China in the hills. He was a rice farmer, and then he got malaria, and then he died. What happens to him? Well, we have this sort of concept that we do salvific work for the dead. We do baptisms and we do the confirmations and the giving the priesthood and all these things on behalf of someone else. We believe that you have to have a body in order to do this. And why is this so important to us? That's what we're doing in the temples all day, every day. Is we're doing the baptisms, we're doing the confirmations, we're doing the endowments, which is another sort of ritual that is very beautiful, and it's a retelling of the story of Adam and Eve. And why are we doing these things for ostensibly for people beyond the veil? Because that unlocks the door for them, that they are able able to begin a sort of spiritual progression and hopefully be put in the best kingdom of glory that they want to be in, because ultimately that's kind of more or less what it comes down to. Is like, where do you want to be? Where do you feel most comfortable? And this isn't just me saying this. This is like this is Mormon doctrine, so to speak. This is things that general apostles and prophets and things like that have said. Where do you feel most comfortable in terms of your relationship with the Lord ad infinitum? And that is what governs where you get to reside in the eternities, and how much of a role you then play in the perpetual creation of all things, whether it's none. I don't know where that gradation is, or a little bit, or you're sort of out there on the front lines and like you're building a world. What does that mean to build a world? I don't know what it means to build a planet. People like to joke, oh, the Mormons, they're so obsessed with the degrees of glory, they get their own planet someday. They're going to be on the they have their own planet. Each wife has their own little mansion on the planet. It's like, it's such a aggravatingly simplistic way of talking about something that is real and is part of our theology, that we're participating in the creation of intelligent life and places in the universe where that could come to pass. But the thought of, oh, this is my planet, I just get to chill out on the planet with my bazillion wives, having sex forever, and now I have a bazillion kids that, who's taking care of those spirit kids? I guess we got to send them to a new planet so I can stop crying. It's like, this is silly. This is silly, you guys. This is not taking what we believe seriously. But I guess at the end of the day, most people don't take what we believe seriously. And I think that's really unfortunate, because we've got a lot of cool stuff going on. I honestly think this has probably gone on long enough. As you can see, I have a lot to say about this general concept. Why do I stay in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints? What about it is so interesting to me? So, hey, stick around. We'll talk about it again soon, I'm sure. At least I hope so. Hopefully work isn't going to be so insane in the near future. I think things are calming down a little bit. No more 11-hour days, no more 6-day weeks. I can kind of give this a little bit more time and attention again, and I'm looking forward to it, and I hope you guys are too. So, as always, thank you so much for being with me today. This is Jacob Taylor, and you have listened to the Polysophical Society.